You like a little DIY. You like to get your hands dirty and do it yourself. Or maybe you just like to know how things are done. Well, I am a seasoned optician and I'd like to talk to you about adjusting your own glasses. Hello and welcome, I'm Eyeglass Tyler. We get a lot of questions every day at SportRx, but some more than others. And so one question that we do get a lot is, I just got my glasses online. How do I adjust them? Well, let's go about that question the Eyeglass Tyler way with a lot of information. So I'll kick the video off with my first recommendation, how I usually respond to that question. Then I'll actually get into some adjusting. We'll talk about adjusting temples. Then I'll talk about adjusting nose pads. And then a fun little tidbit at the end. I'll talk about replacing the rimless liner in those semi-rimless frames. By the way, if you decide to order from SportRx while we're talking about adjusting your own glasses and buying online, I want to make sure that you know that thanks to our See Better guarantee, you are never stuck with something that you don't like or that just doesn't work for you. You actually have as long as 45 days with them, even prescription. Yes, to figure that out. Then you just reach out to us and we take care of you no matter what that means on our end. And of course, we do have opticians who would love to help you get it right the first time. So definitely use this as a resource and reach out to us. Now let's talk about adjusting frames. Now let's kick this off with how I usually respond to this. When somebody says, I'm buying glasses from you online, what do I do if I need adjustments? My first recommendation is always to go to your local optician. We are happy at SportRx to send your return label, get them back, and then we'll adjust them. We're totally fine with that, but it takes time and it might not be done absolutely perfectly the first time because we don't have you there. We're not looking at your face while we're trying them on and doing those little adjustments. And it's a very simple thing generally that you're trying to get adjusted, and it's something that you can get done at a local optician and it should be free. I'll be honest with you, I tried shooting this video before. I already shot it, I went over it, and I was trying to be succinct. I was trying to be maybe a little bit funny and also as short of a video as possible. But what it turned out with was just me saying, go to your optician. And then I kind of go into what I'm about to go into here, but then that was it. I cut the video off and it just seemed a little disingenuous because I didn't actually show you how to adjust anything. And so I am going to get into that. Hopefully it's something that you can adjust pretty well on your own without any issues. But do keep in mind that when you go to an optician, they're trained, they're knowledgeable, and they have tools, as you can see. And so they will be less likely to break them or damage them. Also, another thing to consider is if it's where you bought the glasses. I'm not thinking that this video is only going to be catering to people who bought from us. I'm sure there are people who didn't and would still like to know how to adjust their glasses. And so if you do go back to where you bought them from and they break them, there's potentially some recourse because they were the ones to do it. There is no recourse if you break it yourself and you take it to them. They're going to say, well, you shouldn't have done it. Some materials also don't take very well to adjustments. There are some frame materials that won't adjust well, and also some that aren't supposed to be heated up. And so that's something that your optician will also be more familiar with. So just things to keep in mind before we get too deep into this. But with all of those things being said, I will go over some simple adjustments. If you feel hesitant at all, my recommendation is go to a local optician. If you are really just into doing it yourself or you just want to know how it's done, I'm going to go over some simple adjustments. Let's get into it. Okay, let's start with adjusting temples, and I'm going to be using the Rain Remy, a favorite of mine. If you're looking at sunglasses, this also obviously will apply to eyeglasses. There's no difference between a sunglass frame and an eyeglass frame in terms of how you can adjust it as a general rule. And so let's start with wrapping it behind the ear because that is a common adjustment that you'll make. There are some exceptions to that, like pretty much everything Oakley has their 3-point fit system where it's more of that straight back temple design and it's not meant to wrap behind the ear. But with a design like this where you can already see a slight bend, especially with some of those frame finishes where you can kind of see through it a little bit, you can see that there is a wire core on the inside. That wire core is what actually really holds that shape and holds that adjustment and also gives it a little more rigidity and structure. And so that is the thing that you're going to really be adjusting. But here is where we get into some of the tools that you might not have at home. I'm going to be using this frame warmer here. It's a little bit out of shot because it's not important to see what it is. It's a machine that's meant to put out hot air. Something that I have done before when over at a friend's house and they asked me for a quick adjustment, I'll pull out a hairdryer because that's something that most people have at their house. And it gets you roughly to that same temperature. These do get a little bit warmer, but at least it's something. Do not use a heat gun. If you have a heat gun, you should be pretty familiar with how much hot air those put out, and those will melt the plastic, so you should probably know not to do that anyway, but I just want to put that out there. But the reason that you're doing this is to heat up the plastic. Yes, the metal is going to bend just the same, but if you don't heat up the plastic sufficiently, you can crack it. And so you want to make sure that you heat up the plastic well enough that it will bend and flex and not crack. And so what you want to do before you do that is you want to have the glass, if you feel like they're sliding down your face, is just check to see how they're wrapped behind your ear. If you feel like it's sticking out pretty far past and it would be better to hook a little bit more, you really just heat it up. You heat up, and this is going to be nice and loud. So hopefully you can still hear me. I'm sure you can hear me. I don't need to do that. But it's just a matter of getting that temple tip in that frame warmer. Get it nice and warm. Do be careful of the lenses. Anytime you get the lenses near a heat source, especially if you're talking about any kind of anti-reflective coating or even some mirror coatings, you don't want to get excessive heat on those lenses because it'll be a problem. And now that you've gotten this and you can feel that it has a little bit of warmth to it, you can kind of put a little bit of curve in it. And I like to start a little more conservatively, more toward the end of the temple, and just try and put a nice consistent curve in there. And this might be something that you need to play with a little bit, and you'll feel it once you put that curve, even a little bit of curve, it'll start hooking, it'll start biting, not like a negative way, but you should understand what I mean by that if you're a DIYer. And so you mess with it a little bit. You might have to pull it back a little bit, you might have to pull it forward a little bit, but you're doing it to yourself. So you should have a really good idea of what you need to do, whether it's more hook, less hook, and ideally you can get the perfectly right angle on that temple, and that'll make a huge difference in terms of keeping the frames on your face. There is another adjustment that we will occasionally do, which has to do with the bow. Sometimes there's a little bit too much bow, sometimes not enough. This is more of a straight temple here. And again, it's just a matter of heating up that frame material, and then you'll just kind of work a bow into it or work the bow out of it, and that's going to help to make it hug the head a little more. It might be that you have a little bit rounder of a face. The side of your face is a little bit more round, and so you'll want the frame to kind of clear your head so it's not pinching as much. And so that is something that you can adjust just by gently walking along the temple and then have it bow out. And then you can see now it's bowed out a little bit and it'll hook around the head that much better and potentially be that much more comfortable. Now, another common adjustment is them being crooked on your face, and that has to do with one arm being higher or lower, or one ear being higher or lower, and that is very common. Most people's ears are not perfectly level. When you're looking at the glasses, if you want to get them to a level state, you actually want to put them with the top down. You don't want to put them with the temple tips down, because as you can see, with one temple adjusted and one temple not adjusted, there's a huge difference here. But when you flip it over to the top of the frame being down and the tops of the temples laying flat, if those are level, then you have a level frame. The way that you adjust that is, again, with a plastic frame like this, you would adjust it by heating the frame up and then bending it so that they're straight. When they're on your face, it's a little different. If one side is lower than the other side, you actually have to counterbalance that. So if this side is lower, you want to lower the temple. So if this side is low, you push this side down, this side's going to go up. I feel like I'm getting so into the weeds here, but you guys want to know this, right? That's the whole point of this. You want to know how to adjust your glasses. These are things that opticians do. There is a chance that I go through all of this and you're realizing, you know what, maybe I shouldn't be adjusting my frames. We'll see. Hopefully this video is helpful for you at the end of all of this. One more thing that comes to mind is replacing screws. That seems simple enough, right? Well, not always. If there is a spring hinge in your glasses and that screw comes out, it's going to be pretty tough without the right screw to get a new screw in there. We have what we call self-tapping screws or self-aligning screws, and those have a pretty unique a bit to them. So the very tip of the screw is going to be narrower and not threaded, so that you can feed all the way through the barrel and allow you to tighten that screw up all the way. And then generally there's going to be a bit at the end that you're going to have to snip off. But do keep that in mind. Outside of that, if you don't have a spring hinge, then it's pretty simple. It's just a matter of replacing the screw. That's not a big deal. I'm certain that you can handle that. So I'll give you a little demo here on the spring hinge screw replacement. It's pretty straightforward once you have the right screw. Just a matter of getting that screw in and clipping it. But I have a kind of a beater frame here. I don't like replacing a brand new frame screw because it's not going to be a matching screw. So we're going to do it in this guy. And as you can see, the way the barrel aligns thanks to that spring hinge, it pulls that inner barrel inward, and so you can't get a normal screw through it without a lot of messing with it. And so this self-tapping and self-aligning screw makes this job a breeze. Now let's talk about adjusting nose pads. The demo frame I'll be using for that is the Rimless. So this is a unique frame, and I really appreciate it because you do not often see a plastic frame with adjustable nose pads. It's very uncommon. And so this is what we're going to be practicing on. This is where a tool really comes in handy because, as you can see here, this tool has a flat side on one side. That's going to be the part that makes contact with the actual nose pad. And then you have this notch side on the other side, which is going to clear the barrel, especially if you have the screw type of nose pad, if not the press-in. Even if you have the press-in, that little notch is going to help to clear that and give you a better grip on the actual nose pad. But this is just a matter of then, once you have a good grip, adjusting it in, out, up, or down. Now let's talk about what you're going to notice with those adjustments. So a lot of people think these glasses are sliding down my face, I need to tighten the nose pads. That's not the case. When you bring the nose pads in, it's actually going to make the glasses sit higher on your face. When you bring them out, it's going to make them sit lower on your face because it's essentially making contact with your nose sooner or later. And so it'll sit higher or lower. This is an adjustment that is really valuable if you have a progressive lens and they're not quite right. If you feel like you have to pick your head up a little bit more to look through the reading or dip your chin down a little bit more to look through the reading, that little fine tuning can help quite a bit. Now, if you were to adjust it forward and back, that's going to actually make them sit farther away from your face or closer to your face. That's a pretty simple, makes sense adjustment, but something to keep in mind. If you feel like one side is sticking out a little bit or the other side, there's another thing that can come into mind if that's the case, but we don't have to get into that. It can be easily adjusted by moving the nose pads forward or backward. While we're talking about nose pads, it is important to clean and replace your nose pads, especially if you have silicone nose pads. Those get gunked up pretty quickly, pretty easily. So definitely always make sure that you keep those nice and clean because it'll actually make them grip a little better on your face as well. This frame here, the Rimless, actually has titanium nose pads, which is pretty cool. Definitely gives you more longevity. Maybe not quite the same kind of comfort, maybe not quite the same kind of grip that you would get from a silicone nose pad. However, it looks really cool and it's still replaceable. This is going to take any normal screw type nose pad very well. And now let's talk about replacing the semi-rimless liner in your semi-rimless glasses. And for the model frame on that, it's going to be the Oakley Barrel House 0.5. And so this is a fast and easy method that I learned. I was fortunate enough to start my optical career in the lab. And so I was exposed to a lot more of these adjustments and these repairs than your average optician at a doctor's office would. And so I actually learned a really good method here. And it's kind of fun because I think this actually might be a good one even for those tenured opticians out there that don't have this same exposure, haven't had the same exposure as I have. And it's a nice and simple method. The reason that it's nicer than what you might have learned if you did learn about it is that you don't need to heat anything. There's no heating required here. A lot of people learn by just putting as much line as they think that it will take, and then you heat it down and it shrinks the liner once the lens is in there to get it secured. But I don't really like doing that. This is a better method and it's a lot more straightforward. You don't need to fuss with it. So what you need to do here, obviously in your case, the lens will have already been out because the rimless liner likely broke. And what you need to do is you pop out. Generally, it is going to be that the rimless liner is in that notch a little bit. So you might need to work it out a little bit. And then you just push out the plastic liner in that little hole on both the temple and the nasal side. Now that you've gotten that old liner out, you'll need to get your fresh new liner ready. And now it's time to grab that fresh new rimless liner. But what you do is when you're getting that new liner in there, I like to start from the nasal. And this can be a little tricky because every shape is a little different. Some shapes make this a little more challenging, but for the most part, this is always my go-to. I start in the nasal area. So you put a short little bit in the top, and then you feed the rest of it through the bottom, and then you go all the way across the frame, and then you feed the liner just through the bottom hole, just that bottom rimless liner hole. And then you want to put the lens back in, and then you want to pull it so that it's tight around the entire lens. And then you want to clip that line a little bit away from the frame. We're talking like a millimeter or two. And then you'll take the lens out, and then you feed that liner all the way through the top, and then you pull it tight so that it's in there and seated properly. And now it's just a matter of walking that new rimless liner around the bottom of the lens, and you'll see where the groove is in the lens. You're also going to see what we call a figure 8 on the top. So just make sure that that groove on the lens is seated properly around the entire frame. And then I like to start from the exterior portion, or actually really just the sharpest edge. You want to start with the sharpest edge. So get that sharpest edge in the groove, and then you walk it around. And if you have that ribbon, then you get that ribbon underneath there, and then you pull it until it clears and seats in place. In terms of getting a fresh new rimless liner, a lot of times actually the frames do come with them. Like the Barrel House here does come with the little rimless liner and that ribbon as well to make it a little easier to mess with the rimless liner once it's installed. You even sometimes get a little pattern there, but you don't need to worry about that. But that rimless liner is really nice to have. If you don't have that, you can actually use fishing line. If you have a fishing line that's the right gauge, just keep in mind how thick the liner is in your glasses. That is kind of a standard thickness, but check it out with local fishing supply places. You can go that route. That totally works, and that's probably the easiest way to get it outside of going to your local optician. Now, if you caught that jargon there, I want to mention the figure 8 liner. That's the part that connects to the top of the frame. Hopefully you don't have to mess with that. I don't want to get into replacing that in this video because it can be a little bit tedious and it can be difficult. And I would recommend, if that happens to you, to just go to your optician. That figure 8 liner can break, and then the lens won't stay in place on the top of the frame. And so just go to your optician for that, because that's honestly the easiest method. Let them deal with the headache that is replacing the figure 8 liner. So that covers it for this relatively basic, hopefully not too overwhelming, how to adjust your frames video. I hope this is what you were looking for. I hope you have a little more knowledge under your belt and hopefully feel a little more comfortable adjusting your own frames. Again, I would advise you to be cautious. I would advise you to definitely utilize your opticians if you have them available. In a pinch, I hope this helps a lot. If you feel like I missed anything, leave comments in the comment section below, because we'd love to hear from you and we will get back to you. And do not forget about that See Better guarantee. I think it's a really big deal. I know that I'm biased, certainly, but it is honestly a fantastic peace of mind that you get if you order from us online. You definitely don't need to stress about getting the wrong thing. And again, we have opticians. They'll help you get it right the first time. Thank you for watching. Thank you again for watching. I really hope this was interesting or valuable information. If so, throw us a like. You can find relevant videos over here. And also we have great content on our social media outlets. And I think you should check us out there as well. We have good stuff. You can find us at SportRx.